and welcome to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me as usual is Rich. Hello, Rich.
What's up, Jason?
Not a whole lot. We're excited about not just the beginning stages of the 2020 NBA season, but also a new release of a book that digs into the history of both of our favorite video games growing up. Of course, that is NBA Jam.
Yeah, it's going to get, for the first time ever on the Over and Back podcast, we're going to get a little nerdy here. So bear with us as the usual coolest cats in the room decide to get a little nerdy. You know?
I don't know if I signed up for that, Rich.
Right, yeah. You are always Mr. Cool. So I understand. Yeah. So if people want to back off now and go, hey, look, like I thought these guys were like these badass dudes, but they're going to talk about video games. Like, hold on a minute. Like, sure, it's one thing to pour over, play indexes for historical Dallas Mavericks games, but like, no way. These guys are going to talk about video games? No, I'm out.
No, I understand. Yeah.
So I just wanted to give that little warning. But yes, a brand new NBA Jam book by Rayana Ali and the team at Boss Fight Books, which is a really great publisher as well. They've done a bunch of other books about different video games and highly recommend all those. And we're making our ways through the NBA Jam book right now. We got a review copy, and it's pretty damn awesome. I'm about 75 to 80% done, hoping to get done in the next few days, and I'll have a review, ideally, like I said, up at fansided.com, as well as maybe like a video or audio review as well. But yeah, it's a tremendous book. That's all I can say is I'm really glad. And they reached out to us pretty early in the process, which was cool to kind of say, hey, if you guys are interested, we got this NBA Jam book coming up, and it's right up our alley. I mean, it's a lot about history, and it's a lot about basketball, and it's a lot about video games. So it's cool. It's kind of this nice perfect blend of a lot of stuff that we love, but it's a tremendous book. I can say super, super detailed. It goes through a lot of the background of really video game and arcade history, briefly a little bit about how Chicago was kind of the epicenter of, the video game market. And then a lot of like the early stages of getting NBA Jam off and running, the difficulties with securing the NBA license to even get the game to happen, and just how much of a transformative game it was for video game history. I mean, it is still among one of the best selling games ever. It's still among one of the most obvious. I mean, like that's a game that you can like walk up to somebody on the street and say NBA Jam, and they know exactly what you're talking about. They know, the time period, they know the games, they know all that sort of stuff. So it's a book that was desperately needed to be told about that game, and they did an incredible job. So we have a link if you want to go to bit.ly/objam is what we have as like kind of a short link if you want to check it out, or you can just search NBA Jam book. It is only ebook, but from what we've heard is the pressing and the actual physical book is on the way very, very soon. But right now it's just ebook format. But it's affordable, so it's definitely worth your time. And I think you'll find, and I found that once I sat down and started reading it, I was just pouring through pages. I read almost all of it, like I said, in the course of like 4 or 5 days. So it's one of those books that is hard to put down. So they really did a tremendous job with that one.
Yeah, and Rand is from Columbus, so we're planning to hang out at some point, watch a video game. I discovered that fairly recently, so that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool. I know. Oh, come on! I was like, because I was in a DM, and I was like, oh, hey, I don't know if did you go to Chicago when you were researching for the book or whatever? And he was like, yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, if you come back again, let me know. And then your ass is just like gonna hang out with it. That's
yeah, I know. That's the one time that living in Columbus is better than living in Chicago. I guess.
Columbus, get out of here.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome. That should be great.
Yeah, so you were talking about Chicago. Of course, Chicago is where Midway, the company that made NBA Jam, was located. And really, NBA Jam came to be because the previous arcade release, Total Carnage, did not do well. And then the lead designer and programmer, Mark Turmel, decided to update and reimagine the previous Midway basketball game, Arch Rivals. Do you recall Arch Rivals at all?
I do a little bit, and it's not great. It's when you play it, like say if you play it, I of course played it after I played, NBA Jam many years later, and when you play Arch Rivals, you're like, okay, this has got some of the same vibe of NBA Jam, but it is a little bit more. It's a little more over the top. It's a little bit more like. It's a little more unrealistic. There's, everyone's names are like Blade and like Razor and like, stuff like that. It's more about like the punching and the kicking and that more so than it is basketball. Like basketball seems to be the conduit to like beating people up and fighting and all that sort of stuff. Like at the end of the day, you still want to, of course, have more points than your opponent or whatever, but it's done in a fashion where you could tell it's guys that maybe aren't as interested in actual basketball that just wanted a game that was a little bit more fun but had some vibes. of basketball with it. And you were mentioning as we were getting ready for the show too, that you had always felt that the true, in your mind, spiritual successor of NBA Jam, which is absolutely true, is Konami's Double Dribble, which is out on the NES, I think 86, 87, I want to say, got released. What are your memories of Double Dribble?
Oh yeah, Double Dribble was one of my favorite first video games. I mean, I started playing it when I was 8 or 9 when I first got the original NES, and yeah, that I spent hours and hours on that. And yeah, it's a really corny, cheesy game. You know, the squeaker sounds when you're when you're running, and the video screens, the cutscenes that it goes to when you're going up for a dunk. But it was really fun. It was very simple. It was very I really enjoyed. That game, and also Konami had Blades of Steel, which was kind of a similar vibe, but for hockey. Except there was fighting in that one. No, there was no fighting in Double Dribble, which I always thought would be fun. But I guess arch rivals took that to a sort of like an American Gladiators extreme, and made it over the top to the point where it wasn't fun. But yeah, I didn't play Arch Rivals, but yeah, I always kind of thought later on that Double Dribble kind of set the template, because really, Double Dribble is all about dunks and threes, which was what NBA Jam was kind of about, which of course what the NBA is now kind of about.
Exactly, right. They were ahead of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So
it turns out the true analytic revolution was Double Dribble, which was don't worry about mid-range jumpers, man. Just ram the threes and dunk on people's faces. Like, why are you shooting for the mid-range? But
exactly,
there was quite a few of those like styles. Like you had Double Dribble, like you mentioned. And then after Double Dribble, I think largely because of the success of Double Dribble, you had Arch Rivals, Midway's game. And there was also an Atari game, but I forget exactly who developed this one, but it was called Basket Brawl. And it was the same deal. It was like 2-on-2 basketball, but it was done like in street ball sense or whatever. So it's like you're outside, and same deal. You're just like punching and kicking people and like knocking them down to the ground or whatever. But that was sort of, I don't think anybody really, and I don't know if the technology was quite there to have a full true like 5-on-5 basketball game like we would get later in the years. And you see a lot of people and you see a lot of games try to maybe avoid that. There are a few, and we'll talk about them here in a sec, that do try to do like the simulation basketball, but I think a lot of other people realize it's probably easier to do, especially in the arcade format, is you want to do shorter games. You want to do games that 4 people can play, or something like that works a little bit better, because video games, in those days were not for entertainment. They were for getting your money to putting quarters into a machine or whatever. And then of course they'd be ported over to NES, they'd be ported over to Genesis systems, or Super Nintendo, Mega Drive, whatever. They'd be ported over to the home consoles. And that's where the games that were, meant for the arcades sometimes didn't always make sense on a home court or a home console why the game was like structured the way it was. But then you realize built for the arcade is like built to get your money, like built for you to keep putting quarters in. So that's where like maybe a simulation 5-on-5 6-minute quarters game is not going to be very fun. Whereas like a 10-minute 2-on-2 beat people up type game, anybody can walk up to the arcade and play that one and have some fun in it, even if you're not a fan of basketball. So that's why I think you see a lot of those styles of games, leading up after Double Dribble.
Sure, absolutely. And yeah, the early attempts at the 5-on-5 games weren't, I don't remember those being particularly fun. I mean, it took a while to really get to that point where I feel like with the NBA Live series, like 95, 96 was the first time where they kind of were able to get everything right to make it sort of like similar enough to basketball experience where it felt like basketball, and also, the technology was advanced enough where you could, actually have fun kind of playing that game.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about this as well, as the NBA Jam transforms pretty much the entire video game industry, the sports video game industry, by securing the NBA license, which was something that did not happen a lot at that time. Like, you would have, it's commonplace today that like NBA 2K comes out and it's got all the players and all the teams and all that sort of stuff. But like, there was a time where that wasn't the case. Like prior NBA licensed games that had come out is you start in 1989, you have the Lakers versus Celtics and the NBA playoffs, which has, 5 or 6 different teams and their rosters, which is really cool. I mean, that was still in its own point revolutionary, but still, it's not the entire NBA roster. It's not everybody, but it's your big teams, the main teams you might want to play with. And that's followed up by Bulls versus Lakers, Bulls versus Blazers, other same style, put your 2 big teams in there, also fill it out with some of the other playoff teams, and that's your game. So you got, 5 or 6 different teams to choose from. Not bad. You have 5 or 6 6 different real life player groups to choose from. Again, not bad considering where we had been before. And then you have NBA All-Star Challenge, which is just all the All-Stars from that year put in like various, that's a very weird game. You could do like a 3-point contest and a dunk contest or whatever, but it doesn't quite work out as well as you might think it does. But it's an ambitious game, and I do enjoy that one. But then like prior to that, like all you really have is just generic basketball games, literally sometimes just called basketball or, games with single or multiplayer licenses. Like, the first one, the predecessor that started everything, was Dr. J versus Larry Bird from 1983. And as the title says, it's Dr. J versus Larry Bird. Did you have that game?
I didn't have it, but I had family that had an Atari, and I do remember I have some vague memories of playing it when I was a really young kid. I don't remember if it was fun or not, but I remember
it's one of those things, like you said, I don't know that I can say it was fun because I played it in like 2007 or something. So it's like, to me, like it was terrible. But I'm sure in 1983 it was like, this is the thing. Like, you see it, and it looks pretty cool for 1983. Like it's still if you're hankering for a basketball video game in 1983, your choices are pretty limited. So you better like it. You better find some sort of pleasure in it. But there was that one. In 1988, there's 2 games as well. Magic Johnson's Fast Break, which had Magic Johnson and a bunch of other fake players. And then Jordan versus Bird 1-on-1, which again was very similar to Dr. J versus Bird, where you have Jordan and you have Bird, and that's it. So that one is pretty fun, Jordan versus Bird, because Jordan can dunk from anywhere and Larry Bird can shoot from anywhere. So it's like, it's just a battle of, guess what? Larry Bird wins a little bit more because 3 is more than 2, but
right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Bird can just shoot like, I don't think they programmed it, like anybody to miss anything. So it's just like Jordan, you hit the shoot button, he just dunks, and then you hit the shoot button for Larry Bird, and he just makes a 3, and it's like, this is pretty cool, I guess.
Yeah,
so
there you go. Yeah, and that was definitely, one thing that was, kind of fun about the later games is you occasionally could, there were like little secrets that you could find, like you could change the name of a player, or you could find if you knew the right name, like if you put in like K Jabbar, I think for the NBA Live franchise, you could get Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, would sort of unlock all the stats for that. I think they did that with Jordan too, to kind of get around the idea that you didn't have Jordan's license, although that eventually became a no-no. But the hidden gems were always kind of fun with these games as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's a big era of video games now where I think people just don't, they don't have like cheats and codes and all that sort of stuff, but you forget that like that was our lifeblood as children. Like for whatever reason, like you play this game and it was really good, but it was like, man, there's these cheats or these codes or whatever. And they talk a lot about that in the NBA Jam book as well, where like it got to the level where it was insane. Like they were getting calls at their houses, like the developers, like people asking, hey, is this a cheat or is this a code or whatever? Because all the developers put themselves in the game. All you had to do was put a combination of like their initials and then their birthday or whatever, and it would unlock that player. It would unlock almost anybody that worked on the game or whatever. And then they expanded that in years later by adding, guys like Bill Clinton you could play as, and you could play as, George Clinton as well, who, his music really inspired the NBA Jam soundtrack as well. So there's a bunch of different guys you could sort of play with or whatnot, but it became nuts. Like there was full books, like people, like there were literal books that at like the bookstore that were like Sega Genesis 1000 cheats or whatever. And like, it's unbelievable that like we would care that much about it, but it was like the coolest thing in the world to be like, whoa, the game is different because I did this or whatever. So, it really, I mean, it helped expand because the games ultimately, like, they weren't that deep. You know what I mean? Like, even your best games were, a couple hours at a time. But man, you could add a lifetime of fun by just adding different little hacks and different little cheats and different little stuff that could kind of happen with it. So,
yeah, and of course, this is mostly pre-internet, and even if that stuff was on the internet, it wasn't easy to find. It wasn't. We were pre-Google, where you didn't have just every single bit of information you want on your fingertips. I think it's hard for people who grew up pre-Google, to really understand that.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a lot of it was like. Word of mouth, you would hear a rumor at the schoolyard that, hey, this could happen if you do this or whatever. Yeah. And like all of those were usually wrong, like 100% of the time, or like whatever you heard on the schoolyard was usually wrong or whatever. But yeah, there was like those books that were these cheats and secrets or whatever. And sometimes those didn't work either. And that was a little weird. Or you'd get like, a magazine, like an Electronic Gaming Monthly or Game Pro or whatever. And they'd have like a cheat section or whatever. And those were usually reliable. But yeah, it was the quest for cheats and extras and all that sort of stuff was pretty awesome. In that day, and NBA Jam, of course, no exception to that.
Yeah, for sure. So, in terms of the rosters, the the arcade version of NBA Jam had rosters from the 92-93 season, and then the console versions had rosters from the 93-94 season. Michael Jordan Midway did not have the license for Jordan's name or likeness because Jordan himself actually owns his name and likeness, not the NBA, which was the exception at the time. Shaquille O'Neal was in the arcade version of 93, but then he got his own name and likeness from the NBA, so he's not a member of the console edition, which is the one that I definitely the Super Nintendo version was definitely the one that I have the most experience with it. I do remember the arcade version as well, and a few other differences as well. Drazen Petrovic and Reggie Lewis both passed away between the arcade version and the home version, so they're in the arcade version but not in the console version. And yeah, I don't know in terms of rosters whether I would prefer the arcade version or the home version, because both I think have their both have their benefits and drawbacks.
Absolutely, yeah. I think when and we're gonna go over the arcade version here in a sec, but I think we're gonna get a little bit more of a deeper dive into the home version, because that's the one that I think I'm most synonymous with, and I think most love. Like, there's probably some people that were ardent arcade NBA Jam players, but I think you and I both probably did more of the console and the home version, because when I was going over the two rosters, like, I remembered a lot more of the the home version than I did like the arcade roster. Like the arcade roster, right. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I do remember that guy. I do remember that guy. I played a little bit of it, but more times than not, when I'm looking over the two rosters, it's like, oh, okay, this the home console version is absolutely the one that I remember playing a little bit more of. So yeah, we'll do that when when we go over the different rosters or whatnot, but I did want to mention as well the Shaq and Jordan thing. Jordan owns his own likeness, so obviously NBA Jam couldn't secure his likeness there. They didn't want to pay the money for it, which is totally justifiable. That, like, you paid all this money for the entire NBA, and then you have to pay X amount just to get Jordan. They said, screw it, that's fine. We're good on Jordan. What we did get from Michael Jordan, though, was Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City. Did you ever play Chaos in the Windy City?
I do not recall Chaos in the Windy City. It's
terrible, so don't play it. Yeah. It's really bad. It's like it's not even like a basketball game. He uses basketballs to throw at, like, enemies to kill them. It's like a side scroller beat 'em up game. It is not good. And then Shaquille O'Neal, of course, is not in the home version because he is going to make Shaq Fu, which, again, I hope you didn't play, because Shaq Fu is it's fun bad. It is one of the most fun bad games ever, but it is unquestionably bad. Like, no doubt about it. It is terrible.
Although the NBA Jam was able to get Bill Laimbeer, despite, of course, Bill Laimbeer's combat basketball. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Bill must have just gotten a sack of money for that one, and then didn't really sign his likeness away. But yeah, I always forget about old Bill Laimbeer's basketball or whatever. That game stinks too. But
yeah, it was terrible. Yeah,
it's just like Bill Laimbeer. Oh, okay,
it was bad. Yeah.
And then, of course, Charles Barkley is going to be removed from the tournament edition, because he's going to then secure his license, and that's going to lead to Barkley Shut Up and Jam, which, if you're sensing a theme here, is also a terrible game. So that's that's but real quickly, though, it was cool because there was a limited edition versions of the game that had Gary Payton and Michael Jordan in it. But they were developed for those guys' use. So we're going to talk about how Gary Payton's noticeably absent from these. Well, he requests, hey, can you guys put me in this game? Like, I'm good. Like, I'm a very good player for the Seattle Supersonics. Can I be in the game? So they programmed him into the game and then sent him an arcade cabinet that was specifically for him, sent to him, that had him in the game. And then Michael Jordan as well had a little buyer's remorse after he saw how popular the game was, and I think his kids probably wanted to play as him, so he commissioned an arcade cabinet that had Michael Jordan in it as well. So there's some rumors about that one floating around and who maybe owns it or who secures that particular one, but that's kind of one of the holy grail arcade consoles, the one that has Michael Jordan in the actual NBA Jam game. But good stuff there. But as far as the original arcade rosters, like I said, we're going to go over these real quick, and then I think we're going to do a deeper dive into the console versions, because I think you and I both kind of have a little bit more familiarity with those. But your arcade rosters for the Atlanta Hawks, you have Dominique Wilkins and Stacey Augmon. Boston Celtics, you have Reggie Lewis and Kevin McHale. Charlotte Hornets, Larry Johnson and Kendall Gill. That's going to change in the home version. We'll talk about that in a sec. Chicago Bulls, of course, no Michael Jordan, so you got Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant. Cavaliers, you got Mark Price and Brad Daugherty. Detroit Pistons, Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer. We'll talk about that at the time, because you're probably thinking, wait a minute, what time period is this? And it's probably not the best roster for these guys at this time period, but we'll talk about some reasons why that maybe happened. Indiana Pacers, Reggie Miller and Detlef Schrempf. That's going to be one that's going to change, of course. The next one, Milwaukee Bucks, is Brad Lohaus and Blue Edwards. So that's certainly a contender for the worst duo on the team. It's old Brad Lohaus and Blue Edwards from the Milwaukee Bucks. Things were not good in the early 90s for our Milwaukee Bucks. So
Yeah. It didn't get any better in the
I was gonna say,
home version
like,
either. It's still
it took
the same
about 15
roster.
years for it to get any better there. So.
Right. Yeah.
Miami Heat's Ronnie Cycli and Glenn Rice. New Jersey Nets, Derek Coleman, and of course Drazen Petrovic, which we mentioned. New York Knicks, Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley. Orlando Magic, Shaquille O'Neal, Scott Stiles. 76ers, Hershey Hawkins and Jeff Hornacek. Washington Bullets, Tom Gugliotta, Harvey Grant. So Harvey and Horace both find a way into the game. That's incredible. Dallas Mavericks, Derek Harper and Mike Azzulioni, who we'll talk about in a little bit, is largely considered the most random, probably NBA Jam player. But I guess there was kind of slim pickings on the Mavericks. So
it was not a good team. No. Yeah.
yeah.
So right.
Denver Nuggets, Dikembe Mutombo, LaFonso Ellis. Golden State Warriors, Tim Hardaway and Chris Mullin. Clippers, Danny Manning and Ron Harper. Lakers, Vlade Divac, James Worthy. Minnesota Timberwolves, Christian Laettner and Chuck Person. Suns, Barkley and Marley. Portland Trailblazers, Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter. Sacramento Kings, Wayne Tisdale, Spud Webb. Spurs, Robinson and Elliott. Seattle Supersonics, Sean Kemp, and Benoit Benjamin. This is how we're going to say that we're going to talk a little bit more about the home version, because I think we're all a little bit more familiar with that one. And then Utah Jazz, Malone, and Stockton. So
yes, you forgot one. The Rockets, Akeem Olajuwon and Kenny Smith.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was talking about, I think, who was I getting excited about? So
I don't know. I think I'm excited about Danny Manning and Ron Harper next.
That'll happen to the best of us.
Yeah,
I love my 1992 Clippers. So,
you do, of course. Yeah, they broke the streak, broke the playoff list.
Oh, that's right.
So,
See, so how could you not get excited about that?
Genuinely good team. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's that. That's kind of the arcade version. But like I said, I think you and I and most people at home are probably going to want to dive a little bit more into the home version, because when people say, "Hey, what are your favorite NBA Jam rosters or NBA Jam duos or whatever?" you always hear the Supersonics. People always say, "Oh, the Sonics." I'm positive that you aren't talking about Sean Kemp and Benoit Benjamin. I am sure of that. Yes. So there's a big difference between Sean Kemp and Benoit Benjamin, and then who's going to be on the home version, which is going to be Sean Kemp and Detlef Schrempf. But let's. Do you want to dive into the home versions here?
The home version. So we have so the Hawks are the same. It's Wilkins and Augman. The Celtics completely turn around. It's Dee Brown, Robert Parrish, which of course Robert Parrish at 87 years old is still on the Celtics at this point.
Like literally the least fun NBA Jam character ever is like hard elbow, like hard hat lunch pail, like defense and rebound guy. Old man Robert Parrish, what I mean?
Yeah, but Robert Parrish is a treasure, so I
agree. No, I'm fine with the Chief being in here, but yeah, it's just kind of funny that imagine a child being like, "Whoa, Robert Parrish!"
Right. And then the Hornets get an improvement with Mourning and Larry Johnson. Mourning replacing Kendall Gill. The Bulls stay the same with Pippen and Grant. The Cavs stay the same with Price and Doherty. The Mavericks get an upgrade with they keep Derek Harper, but they get Jim Jackson, who was one of my favorite players at the time. So I was a big fan of the Mavericks having gone to Ohio State. The Nuggets, they get LaFonso Ellis and Dikembe Mutombo. The Pistons remain Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer. The Warriors keep Tim Hardaway and Chris Mullin. The Rockets, they Hakeem Olajuwon, but they replaced Kenny Smith with Vernon Maxwell, which honestly, Vernon Maxwell I think kind of an upgrade as a video game player anyway.
For sure. No, that's definitely a better pick for Houston. It made them a better team all around for sure. So
sure.
No offense to Kenny Smith, but
right. So Kenny Smith can make threes, which is nice, but the 3-point skills didn't really vary that much. I feel like in NBA Jam, I think the guards generally were a little better at threes, but it wasn't like the bigs could make threes too, so it wasn't really a super huge advantage on that.
Right, right.
The guards could get steals a little bit more, but
we should mention too what was really interesting about NBA Jam too is it had kind of like this what they call rubber banding, where if you were up. If you were winning in the game, most of your shots would start missing or breaking, and if you were down, most of them would start making. So if you were down and you shot threes with Robert Parrish, they're probably going to go in. If you were losing by 10 or whatever, and if you're winning by 10 and you're shooting threes with Kenny Smith or whatever, there's a good chance they're going to miss, and you're going to be like, "What the hell?" Robert Parrish is making threes, but Kenny Smith can't. But it's all about keeping the game as close as possible throughout the entire course of the game. So
sure. And then the Pacers, Reggie Miller, and then Derek McKee replaced Detlef Schrempf. Of course, that was the trade in real life. The Clippers remain the same with Harper and Manning. The Lakers remain the same with Worthy and Divac. The Heat make a change. They get Harold Miner and Ronnie Cycli remains. The Bucks, as we mentioned, still Brad Lohaus and Blue Edwards. The Timberwolves remain Laettner and Person. The Nets, Derek Coleman, and then Kenny Anderson replaces Drazen Petrovic. The Knicks with Ewing and Starks. The Starks replacing Charles Oakley. The Magic with Nick Anderson and Scott Skiles, with Shaq being out of the game. The 76ers with Jeff Hornacek and Clarence Weatherspoon replacing replacing Hershey Hawkins. So
yes.
that was yes. Sorry, I got lost on the screen there. And then Kevin Johnson and Charles Barkley for the Suns, with KJ replacing Dan Marley. The Blazers remain the same with Drexler and Porter. The Kings have Mitch Richmond and Wayman Tisdale, so Mitch Richmond replacing Spud Webb. The Spurs remain the same with Robinson and Elliott. The Sonics with Sean Kemp and Detlef Schrempf replacing Benoit Benjamin, which is a massive improvement.
Might be the biggest upgrade in video game history is Benoit Benjamin swapping out for Detlef. So
yeah, and we'll talk about a little bit of a surprise that you would go with Schrempf over Gary Payton. But Gary Payton did have a bit of a slow start to his career, and Schrempf had been the sixth man of the year, so relatively, I think, similar. Peyton, slightly better player, but they wasn't that far off. And also, they already had Schrempf in the game because he'd been in the Pacers, so I'm guessing there was some incentive to not create a new character if they didn't have to. And then the Jazz have Karl Malone and John Stockton, and the Bullets have Harvey Grant and Tom Gugliotta.
So there you go. So let's dive into those rosters a little bit. Like who are kind of our favorites? Who do you remember playing as a kid? Who was kind of your go-to teams?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I did enjoy Jim Jackson a lot, so I did play as the Mavericks. I did not really appreciate the Derek Harper much at the time, but he was fun for me. As almost everybody, I enjoyed playing with the Sonics. The Sonics were a lot of fun. I was a big Charles Barkley fan, so the Suns were pretty fun as well. I think those were basically the three major ones for me. How about you?
Yeah, so for me, I was definitely like a Utah and Seattle guy a lot. And NBA Jam, like, even if it wasn't, like you said, even if it didn't really matter all that much, it felt good to have like a big man and a guard, like as your deal. Because you in your brain, there's always this idea of like, all right, cool, like the guard will get the steals and shoot the threes, the big man will get the dunks and the rebounds or whatever. Like It didn't always like really lead out that way. Like you could have gotten two big guys and two small guys or whatever, but it always just felt better to get like a combination of the two. And that's why those teams really stood out to me. You know, Detlef Schrempf not being like a real guard, but he was able to hit threes. Sean Kemp could dunk from anywhere. It was like, yeah, that's the perfect duo right there. Same thing with Utah. You knew John Stockton would get a lot of steals and shoot some threes, and Karl Malone would get a bunch of rebounds and throw down some dunks. So that was always fun with them. Some alternative teams I try to play with too, because I always try to change it up and be kind of fun or whatnot. The Hawks, I was always kind of a sleeper team for the Hawks because like Stacey Augmon, people I think kind of slept on him. He was a really good distance shooter, and then Dominique Wilkins, he could still dunk the hell out of the ball at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's a real fun one as well. The Portland Trailblazers, I always like playing as them too. That was just like, because you have Drexler and Porter. I mean, that's just me like raining threes. But then both those guys can turn around and dunk on you as well. And they were fast. So if you were against a team that maybe had a big guy, there was some advantageous reasons to be the Trailblazers because they were like one of the fastest teams in the game with, two guards there. Later in life, I became a little bit more of a Charlotte Hornets guy. As well. Pretty recently, like about 2 or 3 years ago, I went over to my buddy's house at it was like 10 a.m. on some Sunday or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And we were just like, "Let's play NBA Jam." And then 12 hours later, we beat the entire game as the Charlotte Hornets. It got to the point where we stopped even talking to each other. We were just like sitting, staring at the game. We at one point shut out a team in the game, which I think is my crowning achievement for sure, is winning a game without letting the other team score. Which I don't know how that happened. It was just like an unbelievable, like once in a lifetime.
You were in the zone.
Yeah, we were just absolutely in a zone at that point. But so we beat that whole game in one day as the Charlotte Hornets. So I have a soft spot for those guys as well. And it's interesting because Larry Johnson and Alonzo Mourning are two bigger guys, which usually I'm not really into being the big guys, but like it was a perfect duo there because it's just strength and muscle. So you're just able to push guys and get every rebound and get every dunk or whatever. No threes. We were just like running down, dunking, running down, dunking, running down, dunking. So it was an interesting way to kind of go about it. But those are always teams that I enjoyed. I kind of wish I had done the Warriors a little bit more because I like the Chris Mullin, Tim Hardaway combo. But for whatever reason, as a child, I guess like the Warriors were such a joke when I was growing up that I was probably like, ew, no, not the Warriors. But that's a pretty fun duo as well. You honestly can't go wrong with just about any team other than like the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think I like. With a gun to my head, I don't think I would be Brad Lohaus and Blue Edwards. Like even if like my friend was like, "Oh, come on, be the worst team," I was like, but like
Yeah.
I don't want to be Brad Lowe's and Blue Edwards. Like,
yeah, the Heat, Ronnie Cycli, Harold Miner. I mean, Harold Miner could dunk, I guess.
Yeah,
so,
Miner was pretty fun. Yeah,
but the Bullets kind of not really that interesting. Harvey Grant, Tom Gugliotta. I mean, Gugliotta was kind of a fun player, but I definitely did not appreciate that in 1994 or whatever. So. Hornacek and Clarence Witherspoon, not really the most exciting team either. So
yeah, and the Nuggets were also tough too, because you think, Dikembe Mutombo, he's cool, but it's like Alphonso Ellis. It's like it's just kind of like not fun to be
right.
Dikembe Mutombo, who's not really like he's like in real life he's blocking shots and doing all this sort of stuff. But do you really want to play as like in this over the top video game? Do you want to be Dikembe Mutombo? It's like my Robert Parrish theory. It's like great players in real life, but do they really scream like NBA Jam to you as like Dikembe Mutombo? So I don't know, that one always stunk, and LaFonso Ellis was LaFonso Ellis.
Yeah,
it's hard to get really excited about LaFonso Ellis.
Yeah, and
he's good.
Right. Yeah, shot blocking wasn't. You could block shots, but it wasn't like certain players seemed to be significantly better than other players at blocking shots. Right. I don't remember that really being a huge thing in NBA Jam, and maybe I just wasn't good enough at it to realize that you could do that. But
it's really all about timing, to be honest.
Right.
Like I could block shots with Danny Manning all day. It's just about timing when it comes up, and then it depends if the game wants you to have a block at that time too.
Well, there's that too. Yeah,
and it doesn't happen, and you're like, all right, fuck off. Like that, I definitely got that block, but yeah, so that's where like the advantage of a Dikembe Mutombo was just like, nah, that's not somebody I'm going to really
get much.
So,
right, exactly. Yeah, so.
All right, Jason, let's take a quick break here from the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast to let people know that this episode is sponsored by MyBookie. And Jason, I know you're nothing if not the world's biggest football gambler. That's you to a T, correct?
Absolutely. If I've got extra holiday spending money, I'm gonna spend it at MyBookie because honestly, there's no risk.
Absolutely. Well, in this case, Jason, even if you just knew nothing about MyBookie, you knew nothing about gambling on sports, you knew nothing about gambling on football, MyBookie has got the deal for you during Thanksgiving week. MyBookie is offering a risk-free bet. Risk-free. You're a man who likes his lack of risk as much as he likes his risk as well. On the Bears-Lion game, all you have to do is choose a team against the spread for up to $250, and if you win, congrats, you've got extra holiday spending money. If you lose, congratulations to you as well, because MyBookie will give you all of your money back. Jason, let me reiterate that again. Up to $250, you bet against the spread on the Bears-Lions game on Thanksgiving, and if you win, you win. Yay! If you lose, MyBookie will refund all that money back to you. It is a no-brainer because, Jason, you literally cannot lose. It's no risk and all gravy. And I know you love gravy on Thanksgiving, Jason.
I absolutely do. So, Rich, I am really interested in going to MyBookie and offering a risk-free bet. But, what if I don't know how to do it? What if I, have a lot of questions? Does MyBookie offer anything that can help me out?
You're just teeing these up for me, Jason. Yes, because MyBookie, they have a patient customer service team. They'll walk you through the entire process. And the best thing is, if you join during Thanksgiving week or before Thanksgiving week, you'll still have one last shot to take advantage of their incredible sign-up offer as well. All you do, log into mybookie.ag and make your first deposit with promo code OVERBACK. That's our promo code OVERBACK, nice and easy. And MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar to jumpstart your bankroll, and that's on top of the already risk-free bet. So, like we said, you're doing the risk-free bet. If you win, you win. You lose, they'll give you your money back. And then also, you sign up mybookie.ag, use promo code OVERBACK, nice and easy to remember. You're listening to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. They will match your first deposit. So if you put $10 in, they'll put $10 in. You put $2,000 in, they'll put $2,000 in at mybookie.ag with promo code OVERBACK. So that, come on. You can't beat that. I'm going to repeat all those again. That's a guaranteed deposit match and a risk-free bet for Thanksgiving only. So if you're a true football fan, which I know you are, Jason, you do not want to let this opportunity pass you by. You simply cannot lose. I know we have a lot of listeners as well that are probably listening to this and thinking, hey, the holidays are coming up. Those bills are going to get a little tighter. I got to buy some extra stuff. This is a perfect opportunity to make a little bit of money. Risk-free, and they will double your first deposit. You cannot beat that, Jason.
Well, Rich, I am going to hop on the gravy train, and I'm going to get on the action with MyBookie.
There you go. Gravy train. It's all gravy. There's no risk. All gravy. It's almost like they wrote this copy for Thanksgiving. If I didn't know any better, I would say that this has some sort of Thanksgiving motif to it. But yeah, no, it's definitely a great deal there. MyBookie.ag. As we said, use promo code OVERBACK. They will match your first deposit. And then during Thanksgiving week on the Lions-Bears game, you get that risk-free bet. You put $250 on any of the teams against the spread. If you win, you get to keep all your money. If you lose, they refund it back. You cannot beat those. So make sure you're part of the action this Thanksgiving at mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
So in terms of who would have been the best team, so we're just going to look at win shares here as a very just a very easy way to look at it. Win shares, your top duos are Utah at 26.6 combined with Stockton and Malone. San Antonio, 21.4 combined with Robinson and Elliott. Chicago right behind them, 21.1 combined with Grant and Pippen. Seattle, 20.1. Now we're looking here. This is, I guess we should say this is all time. This isn't just the 94 console game, but this is also looking at Tournament Edition or the other ones as well. We have Seattle with Kemp and Payton with 20.1, and then New York with Starks and Ewing at 18.9 combined here. Other ones that are near the top are Atlanta, Houston, New Jersey, and Phoenix as well. So
that's some interesting teams in there, especially like New Jersey, popping up and being as high as they were, and make things a little bit fair. I decided to also look at the top duos based off of average, win shares between the two. And it actually does grade out pretty similar as well. So it is the same duo. So that kind of helps out a little bit, because my idea was like, oh man, but there are still some dudes that you look at, like, the Spurs we talked about there. And that's, because we're talking about, there's only two duos, so doing it by average is not going to really, tell the entire tale here. But like the Spurs, you talk about them being the best duo, and yeah, win shares wise, they are one of the better duos. But David Robinson had 20 win shares in this season, and Sean Elliott had 1.4. So it's like,
right.
Yes, there's, their average is still good, their combined is pretty good. But do you really want to be, if you were selecting a team, do you want the team that, like, yes, combined win shares, they're very high, but it's all because of one guy. Like Sean Elliott, good player, but Robinson's the guy that really is like the driving force of that team. Whereas the team that I was, and a reason why the Utah Jazz I think were as popular as they were, is Malone had 13.4 win shares that year, and John Stockton had 13.2 win shares that year. So almost identical duo. So you felt like, you felt like that was a perfect, blend of like, okay, this guy's going to give you everything that you need, and this guy's going to do just as well. Whereas, Robinson and Elliott, you got Robinson doing all the hard work there for that team there.
Right. Mentally, it felt better to have a team where both players were pretty good. Right. Maybe it didn't even make any difference in terms of the skills of the game. But like if you had two good players rather than one great player and one bad player or one mediocre player, it felt better to play that way, even if it didn't actually matter in terms of tactically in the game. Yeah,
exactly. Like the Bulls too. Like Scottie Pippen 11.2 win shares this NBA season, and Horace Grant 10. Win shares this NBA season too. Horace Grant never gets his love for being like an actual really good player in this era as well, especially on that Bulls team. He always gets sort of obscured by Pippen and Jordan and to a lesser extent Phil Jackson. But yeah, he was pretty good at that time. But real. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I want to correct the record before, because I said I said Kemp and Payton, but we were actually talking about Kemp and Schrempf here. We are just talking about the 93 game. So
sorry, we did a little error there. Yeah, because in my head, like I'm a big NBA Jam Tournament Edition guy as well, so I always just include Payton, and I always kind of assume that Payton was on the Seattle SuperSonics in NBA Jam, but he was not. So that's sort of a mistake in my note taking. So I apologize for that.
So that's all right, Rich. It's no problem. You're still on the show. So
thank God. All right, so let's talk about worst NBA Jam duos. So we did a little bit of that as well. Worst ones that stand out to me of this original. I mean, I mentioned the Washington Bullets. Like choosing the pre-Weber, Juwan Howard Washington Bullets is kind of tough, because it's just like Harvey Grant and Tom Gugliotta. Like it's fine. They're okay players, but that's kind of tough. And really, like I think the definitive worst team has got to be the Milwaukee Bucks, right? With Brett Lohaus and Blue Edwards. There just can't be another pick. I don't think. And I mentioned as well, D Brown and Robert Parrish. Nothing against D Brown and nothing against Robert Parrish, but like the excitement level for like me as an 8-year-old to be playing as like a Robert Parrish was just not that high, even though like nowadays I would respect him and I'd probably go there and ironically play as Robert Parrish and D Brown and show people how real basketball's played or whatever. I go to play NBA Jam, at my local arcade or whatever. But like, yeah, it's just kind of funny that like I cannot imagine many kids being super excited to put their quarters in or turn on their Genesis and play as Robert Parrish. So that's
right. Well, looking at your options for I guess this would have been theoretically the 93 Bucks is when the roster would have come out, because we have Blue Edwards, we have Brad Lohaus. If you look at Points per game on the team, we have a tie between Blue Edwards and Frank Brakowski. Frank Brakowski averaging 16.9 points per game at age 33 kind of surprises me there. We have Eric
can't
Murdoch.
be good. How many wins did they have that year? That can't be good.
They were, I think, 28 wins. Actually, that's
not bad for Frank Brakowski scoring their most points. That's not bad.
That's a better team than I would have expected there. Eric Murdoch and Todd Day and Anthony Avent. We have a 30-year-old Alvin Robertson, I guess. We have 33-year-old Orlando Woolrich playing 8 games on that team. 33-year-old Danny Shays. Oh, we do have Moses Malone on that team. Only played 11 games that year, but yeah. I definitely would have gone with Moses Malone and got John Barry on that team. I don't know who has been the other guy, but yeah, obviously I would have gone with Moses Malone in terms of I don't know exactly when they make this decision because I thought it was for the 94 rosters. And yeah, I guess Blue Edwards was on there. He was 5th in the team in scoring in 94. Brad Lojas was 11th in the team in scoring that year. So yeah, but you got mostly the same roster. You do get Vin Baker in 94. So I don't know if they had access to the rookies at that point, but that definitely would have probably been a more marketable choice. But again, they probably thought, yeah, it was the Bucks. Who cares? So
yeah, exactly. How many people are going to really choose the Bucks at this point? So I believe in Tournament Edition you do get Eric Murdoch, Todd Day, and maybe Vin Baker, which, only slightly upgrades that team. It's still not great. It's just like moving the parts around this sinking ship that is the mid-90s Milwaukee Bucks. One of the sleeper bad teams as well, which on its face you're like, well, that no way. It's Bill Laimbeer and Isaiah Thomas from the Detroit Pistons, but think in your head, I mean, this is 1994. The problem, though, is that one of the lead developer, that Mark Trammell, who we talked about a little bit earlier, was from Detroit. So he had really vivid memories of the Bad Boys Pistons. So if given his choice of who he's going to add this game, and he's going to play a lot as the Pistons as well, we'll talk about another little thing that he did with the Pistons in addition to this game, too, is he's going to pick, these legacy guys that were on the Pistons. Like, yeah, Olden Polynice is on that team now, and he's, like, scoring pretty well. Young Allen Houston's on that team, and he's scoring pretty well. Terry Mills is on the team, and now is kind of taking over the lead role. Even like a Joe Dumars at his age 30 season is still a pretty good player, but I get why he would go with the guys like Bill Laimbeer and Isaiah Thomas. It kind of makes sense for the game as well. Bill Laimbeer feels like the embodiment of a game where you're encouraged to shove people down to the ground and steal the ball from them. So it does work that way, but on its face, like by win shares, they're like far and away the worst team because Bill Laimbeer, he only plays, I think 11 games that entire NBA season. And then Isaiah Thomas plays, I think, like half a season or whatever. But they're both completely ineffective, and it's going to be the end of the road for I believe, both of them this year as well. So they stand out, too, where you're like, I get why they're in the game, but there's probably better picks. But, it's a developer. It's up to him. And he's like, screw it. I want my fun players, and I can make the ratings. So I'm going to make these guys still be okay in this game. But, yeah, 1994 not maybe kind to the Bill Laimbeer-Isaiah Thomas duo.
Definitely not at that point. But again, I understand the reasons behind that as well. Yeah, I mean, again, and most of the other teams that were technically bad, it was understandable the reasons that they would be on there. Like, Dallas with Jim Jackson and Ron Harper. Those guys, those would be the right guys for that team. Golden State with Hardaway and Mullen. That's only because Tim Hardaway missed the entire season, so not really fair. Minnesota with Leitner in person. Leitner was, of course, hot rookie or young player, and was the right guy there. And then Gugliotta and Grant, the Bullets didn't really have a better option until Weber came into town. So those all are understandable. Kind of the best of what you had to choose from.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't feel like there's many egregious picks as well, which is pretty tough for a game where you have to whittle the entire NBA down to 2-player duos on every single team, and the developers weren't exactly like the biggest NBA or basketball fans in the world, too, and that's got to be tough too to like have that stress of trying to figure out these things, and largely I think they did a pretty damn good job. I don't feel like there's anybody that really is glaringly like, oh my god, they completely missed this guy. Like you said, Gary Payton is probably the lone one, but you can really make a case for Detlef Schrempf at the time, and then you mentioned the real reason probably why is, oh shit, Detlef Schrempf's almost as good as Gary Payton, and we already made him. We just have to change his colors, just have to move him from one team to another. So yeah. A little bit less work, a little bit less stress that night. So it's like, yeah, you know what? Screw it. We'll move him over to the Sonics and we're good to go. So I absolutely get the justification for doing that as well. And real quick before we get into something else, I did want to touch on the Bulls programmed to choke. So this was, I mentioned, lead designer Mark Tamel. He was a Detroit Pistons fan. That's why, you got Thomas and Lambeer in the game. And he had he put it in the arcade version that his team would have an advantage, the Detroit Pistons, when they played the Chicago Bulls. And the quote here is, when the Bulls played the Pistons and there was a close game and anyone on the Bulls took a last-second shot, we wrote special code in the game so they would average out to be bricks. So Mark Tamel being a little trickster there in those days. So if you were the Bulls against the Pistons and it was a close game, the Pistons were probably going to win that game because the Bulls would just not be able to make any shots and the Pistons would be able to make everything. So
there you go. Yes. So, so if you look at kind of after NBA Jam, the arcade edition, there was, of course, the arcade edition, and then I think the home version was actually called NBA Jam Arcade Edition, and then there was the tournament edition, which had updated rosters, new features, and teams now had 3 players to choose from instead of 2, which was kind of cool. You get Garrett Payton in the game, of course. You also had a tournament mode, which turned off the computer assistance, the hotspots, and power ups, and that was a pretty fun game as well. I like my memories are of playing the first one, but that one also was enjoyable. It was nice to have more options on the roster. That was cool, and having a little bit more variety in terms of how you could play, I thought was cool as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of real cool stuff, and I probably played Tournament Edition more than I played Jam, just because when I was born and just as I was kind of getting older, Tournament Edition came out like right in the peak and the apex of my video game playing and whatnot. So I played a lot more probably Tournament Edition. I've gone back and played a lot more Jam in my recent years as I go back and go to old arcades that have Jam or whatnot, but. Yeah, total game changer too to have the 3 different players on a roster, because it became a little bit more strategy, and they also included if your guys got shoved and knocked to the ground a bunch during the game, they would get quote unquote injured if they got hit too many times. So guys would start to slow down. So you had to be kind of conservative about, okay, look, like I'll put this guy in the first quarter, but if he gets hurt, then he's slower for the second half. So there was a little bit more strategy in terms of how you wanted to play that, and like, okay, for the first quarter I'm going to be my 2 big guys, and then the fourth quarter I'm going to be my big guy, my small guy, or whatever. So there was a lot of little different strategy that was added into that the 3 guys on one team or whatever. So yeah, I have fond memories of both. Probably played a little bit more of Tournament Edition in my day, but real. Otherwise, like kind of minimal differences between the two, just kind of slight improvements with Tournament Edition. But you can't go wrong with either game, really.
Absolutely. And then, afterward, in 1996, Acclaim won exclusive rights to the NBA Jam name, released a game called NBA Jam Xtreme. It was a new team that redesigned the game, and a huge departure for the series. Fans, quickly realized, like, oh, this is not good, and the game kind of fell apart. Starting in 1999, NBA Jam games were 5-on-5 and played like standard simulation basketball. So that was really quite a disastrous turn for a great franchise. And then Midway also began designing other arcade style sports games like NFL Blitz, NBA Showtime, and they also created NBA Hang Time, which was kind of the true successor to NBA Jam, but I never kind of enjoyed those as much. And I was at an age where I was kind of out of the I wasn't quite as into these types of video games anyway. I was still playing video games, but I was an older teenager, college age at this point, and I don't know, the game that I really recall playing was GoldenEye. That was really GoldenEye, Mario Kart, and WCW versus NWO were the ones here. I don't recall any of the NBA games from like the late 90s, being quite as enjoyable as those games were for whatever reason. Yeah,
most of them stunk. Really, I mean, you had like Courtside with Kobe Bryant for the N64. That game was kind of trash, and you had, like you mentioned, the mid 90s NBA lives were pretty damn good. Like they kind of figured it out, but the transition to 3D really threw things off for quite a while in like the late 90s and really, really early 2000s. It wasn't really until the NBA 2K franchise took off that was like, oh, wait a minute, like this is a game. But like you had to have a Dreamcast, and I was one of the weird kids that had a Dreamcast or whatnot. But if you didn't, you were probably a lot of people didn't play those games, but they were sort of emerged from the pack as like, holy crap, these are really good. And then as they grew on the PS2, the NBA Live franchise kind of caught up with them as well. So then you had NBA Live and the NBA 2 games, in the NBA 2K games in the early 2000s that really started to kind of bring the basketball games back to the forefront. And now today, NBA 2K is just this giant juggernaut in the industry, and NBA Live's, kind of struggling to even release a game on a yearly basis these days. But there's NBA Showtime was pretty good. That was on the Dreamcast and N64 and I think the arcades, and that is Midway's updated sort of NBA Jam style game without calling it NBA Jam. That's probably the best of the reworked NBA Jams, and that one is NBA and NBC Showtime. I believe it was in 1999 for that one, and then the whole that kind of genre sort of lost its energy for a bit. They did do a re-release. EA Sports did a re-release of NBA Jam in 2010 for the Nintendo Wii 360 and PS3, which is pretty damn good. Like, it's a pretty fun game. It's got some annoyances here and there, but I think they did a really good job of just kind of recreating the energy and the life of NBA Jam. But you can definitely see that sort of style of game was of its time. Like, that definitely fit the 90s. It fit the aesthetics of the 90s. It fit everything about that. And I think these days, if they had a game like that, and they kind of do, there's this game called NBA Playgrounds, which is out on like PS4 and Xbox One and all that sort of stuff. And it's fine. It's like the same style of it, but now because the simulation games are as good as they are, it's like, what is there really a purpose now to like playing, an NBA Jam style game or whatnot? It definitely, it was perfect for that era. It definitely fit the 90s 100%. So I think it's good that we kind of have those memories, and maybe they don't try to recreate it or force it down people's throats in the 2010s or whatever. So
sure. So we'll close by looking at the most fun, mythical, historic NBA Jam duos. So we went with some all-time possible NBA Jam duos, going with franchises. Set the limit as a minimum of 200 games with the team, and then each player can only be part of one franchise. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar cannot be with both the Lakers or the Bucks. You have to pick one or the other. So I picked these, and then Rich will weigh in with where he agrees or disagrees with. I'm
going to disagree on every
choices.
single one for the purposes of arguments, Jason. I'm going to disagree with everyone. No, I'm just joking.
All right. So the Hawks are first, and I picked Dominique Wilkins. Obviously, I think there's no question about that. And I'm really having a hard time picking a second player, so I'm gonna punt on this one and come back to it. I thought about. I don't know if you want to weigh in on some possibilities for the second player, assuming you agree with Wilkins as number one, or if we want to circle around back to this.
Sure, yeah, and we're talking about not necessarily like the best duos in NBA history, because then it's like, I don't know, it's like Bob Pettit, Dominique Wilkins, or whatever. That's right, not, is Bob Pettit a fun NBA Jam player? No, we're trying to have fun with this game here a little bit. So Wilkins is a no-doubter. Yeah, he screams NBA Jam. That's perfect. As far as the other guys, and that's kind of a weird history of the Atlanta Hawks, is like, in my mind, I'm thinking about like, well, there's like Al Horford. I'm like, Al Horford, though. Do you really want to play as Al Horford in NBA Jam? Like, not really. Joe Johnson's not a bad pick. Honestly, the guy that kind of comes to my mind, which again, like it seems wild that you would want to pick that guy, but like a Josh Smith type might be pretty fun. To have an NBA Jam, but like it feels weird to say Josh Smith is one of the two, all-time duos of the Atlanta Hawks, given all that franchise had for the years and years and years. I guess someone like a Mookie Blaylock might be interesting as well. Maybe someone like a Doc Rivers, but there's nobody feels like a perfect number two to the Hawks.
No. Yeah, and like Lou Hudson or John Drew might be fun, but I feel like they overlap. You kind of want a different style player than Wilkins, so I think that's beneficial too, to have two players who are kind of different from each other, even if it doesn't, again, matter that much in the gameplay. I thought about Dikembe Mutombo. Tree Rollins, a good big man, can block shots and stuff, but again, shot blocking isn't really that important. So Pete Maravich is definitely another one that I thought about, but I also was going to consider him for the Jazz. So
he might be. That's my one pick, maybe to swap him out of the Jazz and into the Hawks might be a possibility as well, because he seems like a lot of fun. But like, you always kind of assume he played for the Hawks more than he did, and he really didn't play with them that long. Well, he didn't play anywhere really all that long. But he strikes me as like a guy that screams NBA Jam. Would be kind of a good compliment to Dominique Wilkins, but feels a little weird to kind of put him in the game over all these other players that played for the Hawks for all those years and had pretty good. So that is a tough one. The Hawks is tricky.
Yeah, so we'll circle back around to that one. We'll come back at the end and see if we can fit in a second Hawk. So obviously, as a Atlanta Hawks fan, very personal for me to get the right choice. So next for the Celtics, we've got Larry Bird and possibly the best possible NBA Jam player Antoine Walker.
I love it, man. Yeah, because you don't want Paul Pierce head faking and pivoting in the mid range. Like, get out of here, and then get out of here, get the hell out of here. And like Bill Russell, like you said, what Bill Russell does probably doesn't scream NBA Jam either. Like, you don't need hard defense and rebounding or whatever. Yeah. But man, you need some threes. You need some dunks and you need some threes. And Antoine got them for you. So and you get some power ups and you get some 4-point shots. Like, you're perfect.
Right. Yeah. In reality, of course, Antoine Walker, there were no fours, but in NBA Jam there can be fours. So Antoine Walker perfectly realized it. So
I love that pick. Yeah, I love Antoine Walker. That's a great pick.
All right, for the Nets, we're going, of course, including ABA history. We're going to go with Julius Erving and Jason Kidd. I think there's plenty of Sixers that we can choose from, and I think the Nets need Erving more than the Sixers do. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and otherwise Nets, like, I guess you could go Vince Carter, but I'm sure we're going to put him somewhere else that you don't need him. And then I don't know, you got Keith Van Horn and Richard Jefferson and none of those guys really scream. So no, I like the pick there for sure.
Yes. So for Hornets, I went with another possibility of the greatest possible NBA Jam player, Baron Davis, and Larry Johnson.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my God, I can't. If that was the duo right now, the second we're done with this game, I'm going to play as Baron Davis and Larry Johnson. That's a perfect combo for NBA Jam. So you get kind of the fun of Muggsy Bogues, the smallness compared to the big man or whatever, but you get Baron Davis, who all around was a better player than Muggsy Bogues, could dunk, could shoot threes, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, Baron is a perfect pick for the Hornets. I love it.
Yeah, and I thought about Kemba Walker, but really Baron Davis is more fun. But if for some reason you wanted to narrow the Hornets history down to say somewhere between 2005, 2014, and just pretend they're not called the Hornets, pretend they have some sort of ridiculous name I don't know, Bobcats maybe, a
Wildcats or something. Yeah, some lame generic ass name.
Yeah, no one would ever name their team that, obviously, but let's just say let's limit to those years for whatever reason we want to do. Kemba Walker, Gerald Wallace, that's probably a pretty good NBA Jam duo as well. If you wanted to kind of limit it to those years, the beginning parts of Kemba's career, and then of course, Wallace, pretty much his entire career in Charlotte. I think that would work. That would be fine with me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Fair enough. For the Bulls, so we're going to assume no Michael Jordan. He's going to steal. He's going to have his rights and take them away. So I went with Scottie Pippen and Artis Gilmore.
I like it. Yeah. The Artis thing is cool because, obviously his Bulls tenure maybe not the most sexy tenure ever, but you got the fro, you got the sideburns, you got and he's a good complimentary Jam player too. He feels of what NBA Jam would sort of be, and it's a better pick than a Chet Walker or whatever. I mean, that's it's boring.
Yeah, nothing wrong with Chet Walker, but
I love Chet Walker, but and then the other guys you're talking about, you're not going to add Kirk Hinrich to that game. You're not a maniac, you wouldn't do that. You're not adding Tom Borwinkle or Tony Kukoc or whatever, any of those guys, and someone like a Joakim Noah might be kind of fun, but maybe not.
I thought about him.
A guy that, he might not be a guy that really, and then Derrick Rose is a guy who obviously probably fits a little bit better, but I want to put Artis Gilmore in there. I don't want to put Derrick Rose in there.
Right,
so.
You don't want to put Derrick Rose for other reasons. So, Ben
Gordon might be fun too, because that man loved to shoot, so that's true. But
Ben Gordon wouldn't have been bad. Yeah, he wasn't good for very long, but Ben Gordon would be an enjoyable play. That's not a bad dark horse, I would say.
But I do love Artis Gilmore. I'm pro Artis Gilmore for sure, so that's a good pick.
Yes. The Cavs went with LeBron James, not surprisingly. Second player went with maybe slightly controversial, but Larry Nance. Also a really fun dunker. Also, bigger guy. I think they're similar type players in terms of size, and obviously LeBron much more skilled, but Larry Nance also very skilled. I think that would be a really incredibly fun team. There's a lot of Cavs who I would say are relatively equal in terms of the team's history that you could throw in there, a Mark Price, a Brad Daugherty, Kyrie Irving, maybe even Kevin Love, that you could throw in there to be a good compliment. It would be different from James, but I think of all those players, I think Nance might be the most fun NBA Jam player.
But why not Tyrone Hill? That's the real question. Why not Tyrone Hill? No, that's not a bad take. I'd probably go with a Mark Price. I kind of like the Mark Price LeBron James combo there.
Okay.
And that feels very representative of Cavs history as well. Kind of the Mark Price into LeBron. But I have no issues with Larry Nance either. That's a pretty good pick as well. And I think that'd be a fun duo. And let's be honest, you got LeBron James on the team, and he's probably the ultimate, sort of hypothetical NBA Jam player. So pretty much anybody you have with them is probably going to be okay. So yeah, I like the Nance pick. I'd probably go with Mark Price, but I can't hate on it too much. So.
Okay. So maybe the most controversial that we're going to go with here for the Dallas Mavericks, Dirk Nowitzki, and Sam Perkins.
Ooh, okay.
Just gonna have big guys just shooting threes, getting rebounds. They're tall enough to dunk. I think it works. I think Sam Perkins is another like made for NBA Jam type player. Big men who can shoot. I feel like are fun in the NBA Jam sense. I think obviously historically Rolando Blackman would have been a better player, but honestly, Rolando Blackman's kind of a gap for me. Like, I'm aware of, obviously, his importance in NBA history, but stylistically, I haven't seen him play a lot, and I do remember Sam Perkins a lot more, so I'm going to go with Sam Perkins.
No, you're absolutely right, too, and NBA Jam did sort of, like, again, they were ahead of the curve, like, by 20 years, guys. Like, you should have went and looked at what NBA Jam was doing, but, like, absolutely, like, a big man that could shoot threes, that's a game changer in that game. You're not going to block him. He's going to be able to get blocks and rebounds and then shoot threes. Like, it's perfect. The only other guy I would maybe say, but I'm assuming that you used him a little bit later in the game, would be Steve Nash and Dirk. For the Mavericks would be pretty fun, but I feel like there's probably an opportunity to add Steve Nash to another team later in the game. So I see where you did there, and if that's the case, then I agree with you. Maybe Jason Terry would be fun too, but you kind of want to represent two different eras as well. If you're trying to have a fun, like, hypothetical all-time team, do you really want two guys that like were like running mates in real life? Like, I don't. I kind of want to have some fun stuff. So I'd maybe add like a Brad Davis typer in there or something like that. But I like the pick of Perkins for sure.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you.
And that's a hell of a team. I'm thinking now in my head, like, how do you stop Dirk and Sam Perkins just raining threes, block? I mean, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's fun times. Yeah, they're not going to defend anything, but again,
that's fine. Yeah, it's a VJ. Yeah, you're good. Just score more.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So. The Nuggets. This is a really tough one, actually, but I went with David Thompson and Nikola Jokic.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I like it. Yeah, Jokic is a weird one. I think people are going to be upset about the no Carmelo Anthony, but I get it. I get the justification there. I like it because you got Thompson more of the high flyer, Jokic a little bit more of the muscle, the power, but can still shoot it from long range.
Too.
Yeah,
I know passing doesn't super matter in NBA Jam, but theoretically, again, you're only the one other guy, so the passing, I guess, doesn't really matter. But I definitely thought Carmelo, and I'm fine with including Carmelo, but I feel like Thompson and Carmelo, like, even though Carmelo's obviously bigger, played forward, Thompson more of a guard. I just feel like they overlap a little bit too much, and I think Jokic brings something different. The other guys I thought about, Dan Issel, obviously one of the great scoring big men of all time. Alex English, the biggest scorer in franchise history. There's also someone like Fat Lever, even Bobby Jones, who it was incredible. Even Dikembe Mutombo, we said kind of a boring NBA player, but definitely a guy, who would be fun to be in there. Yeah, the Nuggets have a lot of like really fun, interesting players to be in there, and they don't have the same sort of definite, like, okay, oh my God, this guy has to be the franchise guy on here. I mean, Issel and English are close to that, but I didn't feel absolutely, had to be there versus David Thompson, who had the greater peak, but obviously didn't have longevity with the team. So tough decision there for sure.
Yeah, no, I like it though. It's a bold pick, and I support it 100%.
All right. I appreciate it. Next for the Pistons, Grant Hill and Rasheed Wallace.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like you probably want to get Isaiah in there, but I get why you would maybe not. I get the Grant Hill sheet. I mean, that's a good balanced team. Nice height, good at shooting, good at rebounding, good at like it does feel a little bit better. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm sure people are gonna want some Isaiah in there, but I like it a lot. Maybe a Chauncey Billups would be an interesting pick as well.
Right.
I like the Hill Rasheed. That's a good combo.
Yeah, I mean, the Pistons have a lot of interesting guys to choose from. I mean, Libera's kind of a fun NBA Jam character, as we talked about earlier. Even Bob Lanier, great big man would be fun. Dumars, not really the most interesting NBA Jam character, but would be good. And yeah, Thomas would be a lot of fun, but I kind of feel like Hill does a lot of the small guy stuff that Thomas does, and also does, bigger forward guy type stuff. So that was kind of my justification there. I definitely could think he could bring Isaiah in there, and given the importance in team history, I definitely think was good. I think Rasheed's almost a perfect NBA Jam player, so I think that one was, even though he's less significant in Pistons history than some of those other guys, obviously very important for those 2000s teams. I feel like he's a guy. Another guy, honestly, who I think would be a great NBA Jam player is Andre Drummond. Like, he can do a little bit of guard stuff here and there. Like, once in a while, you'll see a highlight, and he'll do some nifty dribbling and be like, oh yeah, he's actually like really skilled in that. Even though he typically does more just kind of rebounding big man type stuff. But he can dunk. He's kind of I think a more fun video game player than he is a fun player in real life.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I like the choice. It's bold, but I appreciate it. I like it.
Yeah. Warriors, Steph Curry, Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah, that's perfect. Isn't that it? Like, that's it right there.
Yeah.
I don't know arguments. It's obvious that's that duo. That's perfect.
Yeah, Rick Barry's fun too, but as a player, I think those are good. The Rockets, Akeem Olajuwon, James Harden.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, Harden is probably a pretty good NBA Jam player as well with the threes and able to drive the lane or whatever. And Hakeem is a guy that controlled the boards as well, and decent at blocking, decent at rebounding, decent at dunking. So I like it. Yeah, I mean, there's cases to be made for a few other guys. I would say Trace McGrady, depending on if you weren't going to use him in the Magic, is a possibility, but he might work there. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I think Harden and Hakeem is probably a good pick.
Yeah, I mean, Yao Ming would be just kind of interesting just to have in there, even though I don't know if he's the best NBA Jam player, but he's just kind of a fun guy to include. Moses Malone, I think would be young Moses Malone would be fun, maybe even Elvin Hayes. But yeah, I do think obviously this is these are definitely two I think who fit the game, and then the two best players in franchise history I think at this point clearly. So yeah. Next for the Pacers, Reggie Miller and Darnell Hillman.
That is a pull right there. Darnell Hillman. All right. So Reggie, I got no issue with. What is your justification for Darnell?
Hillman? Darnell Hillman, great dunker. Represents the 70s team in a way I think stylistically is more suited to NBA Jam than some of the the great players from that team like Roger Brown I think might be, but he overlaps I think a little bit with Reggie Miller. You kind of want a bigger guy. Mel Daniels I think of as more of a he's a great big man but more of a ground bound big man and not super athletic. Obviously I haven't seen a lot of Mel Daniels footage because there isn't really very much, but that was kind of my justification there. Also, great afro, and brings that to the game. So that was my justification.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I mean, there's the Pacers. It's an interesting history in that I don't know that many of the players are dynamic, over the top, NBA Jam-esque players. I mentioned a guy like a Roger Brown or whatever is a very good player, a franchise legend, but I don't know, does he really represent what you'd want? Rick Smits is a guy too, he was there a while and is good, but and Danny Granger, obviously a hallmark Piston, but not exactly very good. And then Paul George, who you can add in there as well. I mean, he was there for quite a while. Jermaine O'Neal, another guy as well, but none of those guys really jump off the page. So yeah, the Darnell Hillman, I like it. It's a nice, fun pick there, and it also, like you said, it kind of goes back to the 70s era, which you try to represent a little bit too. So I'm cool with it.
Cool. Next for the Clippers, we have Bob McAdoo, and second choice, I think, is kind of tough. But I think for now, I'm going to put Chris Paul in there, but consider that we may need him later for the New Orleans franchise. Right.
And if that's the case, I think we can easily slide in someone like a Blake Griffin maybe into that role or whatnot. I'd probably be fine with that. If we were able to do a Bob McAdoo, Blake Griffin. It's not ideal, but it's also Clippers history, so there's not a lot to choose from, unfortunately. So.
Right, yes. Blake Griffin. Now, Griffin McAdoo is the combination there isn't the most. I mean, they're great players, but I don't know. I guess Griffin can do enough ball handling stuff that you could make that work. But I have some other ideas that we'll get to that point when we get there. But because there's a one very important player who we absolutely need to include in this game who doesn't have a natural home, so we got to find one for him, but we'll get there. So next for the Lakers, assuming no Shaquille O'Neal, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant.
Right, that's as easy to pick as there's going to be for sure.
Okay. For the Grizzlies, I went sort of against importance in team history and went with fun, although he is very important in team history, and went with kind of fun NBA Jam type player, Zach Randolph and Mike Conley. Zach Randolph going over both Pau and Mark Gasol. I guess the Gasol brothers themselves, that would be kind of noteworthy as well to include the two of them. I could see arguments for that, but I'm going to go with Randolph and Conley.
Yeah, it's Grizzlies are kind of tough. I mean, who do you, Sharif Abdul-Rahim and Paul Gasol, there's not necessarily the greatest lineage of super exciting players. So I like that. I think in 5 years time we'll talk about adding Ja Morant to that list or whatever. But right now Zach Randolph and Mike Conley, I like that combo. That works for me for sure.
Yeah, Conley and Mark Gasol, Conley and Randolph I think are the two best choices there. For the Heat, Dwayne Wade and Alonzo Mourning. Of course, LeBron James has to go with the Cavs. So
yeah, I like it a lot. The Wade Mourning, that's that's like a definite combo that if you were playing the game and selecting, like that's who you want, that balance thing of the shorter guy, the guard versus like the big man. That's perfect. I like that combo a lot.
And then for the Bucks, Giannis and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
That's going to be a problem, man. I am into that team, man. That I love. Yeah, that's perfect. That's length. That's dunking. You're not shooting any threes, but man, they're going to dunk it down your throat every single time down the court. So I like that one a lot.
So for the Timberwolves, Kevin Garnett, and then for second one was kind of tough choice. There are not a lot of great guards for them, but I figured Garnett can do most of the guard stuff. And then for the second player, Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, and it's the same deal like we talk about some of these other franchises that have been around for all that long. Is like you're a little limited in terms of the guys you're going to add there. Like, Christian Laettner is not really a sexy pick. You probably don't want to add him in there.
Terrell Brandon wasn't there that long. I mean, he's a good guard, but
Ricky Rubio. It's like, I don't know.
I thought about him. He might be a fun NBA Jam player.
He'd be fun, but I like who you picked here. I think Karl-Anthony Towns and Garnett are a fun duo and really represent like the two kind of charter guys on the franchise, guys with tremendous skills that will probably just be disappointed in their career because of the franchise they play for. So we'll probably have to leave until they can finally achieve greatness in their career. So it works. It definitely works.
Yes, and notably, Sam Cassell does not fit the 200 game rule, so he cannot. He was not eligible for consideration here. So next we have New Orleans franchise. We have I think Anthony Davis is a definite, despite the bad feelings that are there right now with the team. And then the second one, it's hard not to go with Chris Paul because of his greatness. I mean, you could waive the 200 game rule and choose Zion Williamson, who has this date has not actually played with the franchise. With somebody, I don't know, there's David West, PJ Brown, maybe Drew Holiday. I mean, he definitely is an option that you could consider. He's been there a long time. He's kind of the probably the most popular player in franchise history pre-Zion at this point. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, it's tough. I think just because we don't know what Zion's going to be, that's one where if we pick that, we press that game, and then Zion, has a multitude of NBA injuries over the rest of his career and never really kind of develops. People are going to be like, man, they chose Zion. That was way too early for them to choose Zion. So I feel weird about doing that, but there's nobody that played more than 200 games for this franchise. So it's slim pickings. I like our idea a little bit earlier of moving Chris Paul away from the Clippers and moving him here. It's weird that it's not our fault, but it's going to be like, hey, the Pelicans, and it's Chris Paul, who, really never played for the Pelicans, but that's the way they've chosen to do their history, so that's what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. If you want to stick to strictly Pelicans, who do you have? You would have to pick Zion or Drew Holiday. It's like Drew Holiday. Right. And Davis, and that's not fun. That's kind of boring as well. So I like the idea. Right. I'm okay with moving Chris Paul away from the Clippers, giving the Clippers Blake Griffin or whoever, and Chris Paul becoming a representative here with Anthony Davis. I think that's a pretty cool combo too. So. Okay,
well, let's circle back to we'll slot Chris Paul in here. I'll circle back to the Clippers at the end because I want to get through a couple of things before we absolutely make the determination for the Clippers. So we'll circle back to the Clippers and the Hawks at the very end here. The Knicks, Walt Frazier, Patrick Ewing. I think that one's pretty clear.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. That's good big man, small man thing. That's ideal. Yeah,
maybe Earl Monroe over Frazier, but I mean Frazier I think was more important to the team's history. Even though Earl Monroe might be slightly better NBA Jam player, but it's close. I think we're okay there. I set the Thunder and Sonics separately, but I think we can discuss them separately and then discuss them together. For the Thunder, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant. For the Sonics, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, keep the classic duo. I think both of those seem fairly clear to me. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Westbrook Durant. I mean, there's almost no other pick for the Thunder, of course, and then Payton Kemp is the ideal perfect Supersonics NBA Jam duo. So yeah, 100% in agreement with both of those.
So if you have to merge the Sonics Thunder history and you have to pick two players out of those four, who do you?
Oh man, I maybe do Gary Payton, Kevin Durant, but I feel bad leaving Sean Kemp out of there. But Kemp and Durant doesn't seem quite. I'm unfortunately sending Russell Westbrook off to the pasture, even though he's a pretty good NBA Jam player. But we're talking about the all-time greats here. I'm probably doing Payton and Durant, but I could definitely make a justification for Durant and Kemp as well.
See, I think I'm actually doing Kemp and Westbrook. I think Westbrook is going to be a fantastic NBA Jam player, and I think Kemp is maybe the best NBA Jam player. Although, I think you cannot go wrong with any combo here. I don't think. I think they're all pretty good. So I think I'm going Westbrook Kemp, but I can be talked into any of the other ones. So Next, Orlando Magic. Again, assuming no Shaq, Tracy McGrady and Penny Hardaway.
Yeah, I love that duo. Yeah, assuming no Shaq, of course. If you're allowed to use Shaq, you'd probably maybe put him here. You'd put him on the Lakers or whatnot. But without him, McGrady and Hardaway, yeah, that's perfect. And I love that duo too. It's a pretty fun NBA Jam duo.
Yeah, but both have number 0, so we have to deal with that, but we'll figure it out. So, or number 1 rather, not number 0, correct? Number 1?
Yes, number 1 for both of them. Yeah, we'll make it work. Hey, the real NBA Jam didn't have numbers on it, so that's fine. Our NBA Jam's not going to have it either. So,
and it never occurred to me, Penny number 1, like number 1.
Oh my God, you're right. I was 10 years old when I realized that. Holy shit! Wow, unbelievable.
There you go. Next we have the Sixers went with Allen Iverson and Moses Malone.
I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah.
Really hurt me not to put Bobby Jones on either the Sixers or the Nuggets. I really wanted to get Bobby Jones in here, but the over and back marketing team convinced me to go with Iverson over Bobby Jones.
And I think they were right. I understand. I understand the temptation there, but yeah, I think Iverson and Malone is definitely the number 1 pick there.
Yeah. Then the Suns went with Steve Nash and Charles Barkley. I kind of forgot about Charles Barkley's non-inclusion in the later NBA Jam franchises, so I don't know if we want to make a Charles Barkley can't be in it rule. I don't know. I guess first of all, do you agree with my choices? And second of all, if we can't do Charles Barkley, then who should be replace him for the Suns?
Yeah. So yeah, assuming we I like to pick if we allow Barkley as part of it. If we can't allow Barkley, it becomes a little trickier because, like, I don't, Amari Stoudemire would be one that I would think that'd be pretty good, but like, I don't like doing like guys that were actually duos, together in real life. So that one doesn't really. I don't know if I really love that one all that much. Maybe like a guy like a Connie Hawkins would be an interesting one to kind of throw in there.
Yeah,
but
I like that.
A little Steve Nash, Connie Hawkins, just kind of get some different eras in there. That might be my pick because Sean Marion is like, I don't know. I don't really want to add Sean Marion in there either.
I think Nash and Marion would make a really good NBA Jam duo. I agree, and Amari too. Obviously, they were both fun in real life. Alvin Adams, kind of interesting one, but it wasn't like a dunker. It wasn't really fun. Walter Davis is a good scorer, so he might be fun with Nash. I think I like Connie Hawkins the best out of those. Actually.
Yeah, I think that sounds.
I didn't consider him, but yeah, I think that's a good choice. So we'll go with that. Blazers, so I think Clyde Drexler definitely, and then I think we choose between Damian Lillard and Bill Walton. I put Lillard down here, but thinking more about it, I actually might pick Walton over Lillard, or maybe, I don't know, do we consider Lillard and Walton and not Drexler? I think that's a really tough choice.
Ooh, yeah, I feel like Drexler's got to be in there. I'm keeping Drexler in for sure. I would maybe move Lillard out for Walton, but I kind of like the Damian Lillard Clyde Drexler combo because it does feel, because we talked about NBA Jam, the original was like Terry Porter and Clyde Drexler, so they always were a team that was kind of cool because they were both these kind of like combo guards that could do a bunch of stuff. So I like the idea of Damian Lillard and Drexler kind of being the spiritual, or Lillard being the spiritual successor of the Terry Porter. So I'm down with that, but yeah, you could easily make a case for Bill Walton too.
Okay. All right, next we have the Kings. Really interesting choice here, I think. Oscar Robertson, clearly the greatest player in overall Kings Royals franchise history. Not even really close. But also, I don't know if he's necessarily the most fun NBA Jam player, but he does everything so well, but his style was relatively boring. But it also feels weird not to include him. And then, secondly, I went with Peja Stojakovic, but you could talk me into a lot of other players or combinations. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, you could talk about obviously Chris Webber, who we have not mentioned yet.
Right.
Getting in there and finding his way there, but he doesn't strike. I mean, he was actually a very good NBA Jam player because he could shoot some threes or whatnot. Oscar's a no doubter. Oscar's in there for sure. But I like the Peja pick though, because Peja's going to rain those threes with you. Good combination along with Oscar Robertson, so I'm okay with it. You can definitely make a justification for someone like a Chris Webber, or even to a lesser extent like a DeMarcus Cousins or whatever. But I like the Peja pick. It's pretty good. And people, you go and look at Kings history, and Peja's got he's in that mix as like an all-time great King, more so than even Webber or some of the other guys that he played with. So I'm fine with that pick.
Yeah, I mean, they're at similar levels, I think. I mean, Jerry Lucas is sort of an interesting player. Tiny Archibald, definitely. Maybe stylistically, you might put him Oscar over him. Someone like Mitch Richmond, who was in the game. Even Vlade was kind of interesting stylistically. But yeah, I think there's definitely some good choices there. Next for the Spurs, I went with George Gervin and David Robinson. I think David Robinson is a better and more fun NBA Jam player than Tim Duncan is.
I would agree.
But I find putting him in there. I also considered Manu Ginobili, who stylistically would be an awesome NBA Jam player, but I think Gervin, overall, I would put over Ginobili, but I think it's very close.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on there. I would pick Gervin over that, and it's hard. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to like leave out one of the best NBA players of all time from his own franchise. But like we're trying to have some fun here, so we're trying to have a fun little duo. And yeah, if you're gonna do that, I think Robinson has to go in over Duncan. So it's hard to justify on its face, but I think you're on the right track there for sure. And you know Duncan, despite being all time great, Robinson's not that far off from him. Right? David Robinson was a tremendous player as well. So it's not like we're adding a dud in there and taking out Tim Duncan. We're just adding a guy who wasn't quite like the top 15 player of all time, but a guy who's definitely in the mix as a top 50 guy or top 100 guy in David Robinson. So yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yes. So for the Raptors, went with Kyle Lowry and Vince Carter.
That's perfect. I like it.
Another one where I considered breaking the 200-game rule and maybe throwing Kawhi Leonard and Vince Carter, because that actually sounds like a really fun NBA Jam duo, but I went with Lowry for the longevity and the franchise importance and also a pretty fun NBA Jam player as well.
Yeah, that works as well. I mean, I guess you can maybe make the justification for like a Chris Bosh and Vince Carter combo there, but I like where you went with that. I think that's a nice little duo, nice little combo. So yeah, I have no issues with that. And yeah, like I said, maybe Kawhi would be pretty good to get in there, but I like the Lowry Carter combo for sure.
So for the Jazz, another controversial, tough decision. I mean,
yeah, this is you're off the rails here, sir. But
okay, obviously
I'm not on record. For the record, this is not my pick. So.
Okay, all right. Obviously, Malone and Stockton would be the essential picks, but Malone, not really a fun NBA Jam player.
Oh, get out of
Stockton,
here.
kind of fun, but I went with Pete Maravich and Andre Karolinko. Andre Karolinko, a perfect NBA Jam player.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Almost as good as Antoine Walker, but I think Karolinko is a perfect NBA Jam player, and Maravich is great, and almost a perfect NBA Jam player too. But again, when I did this, I wasn't really thinking about the Hawks needing him more, so maybe I would put him on the Hawks, and then I would and probably pick Stockton. Rethinking this, that's probably what I would go with Stockton and Karolinko, who actually. Yeah, they played together for a season. So,
that's right. I forgot they did overlap a little bit there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Stockton and Malone. You're just an absolute maniac here with this pick, but I'm definitely in favor of moving Maravich over to the Hawks, and I love Andre Karolinko. I think you have great justification there. If we had 3-man duos, I'd definitely have the third guy be Andre Karolinko. But I mean, come on, it's Malone and Stockton. What are you doing?
You know what? Honestly, I don't need to include Malone in my team. I don't have to. It's not.
That's fair. I mean, I get it. Hey, you know what? You're strong in your thoughts. You're strong in your opinion. I respect it. You're wrong, but I respect it. So that's fine.
Yeah, respect how much I'm wrong. I appreciate that. And then last but not least, one of the least, but last, the Wizards Bullets franchise, Gilbert Arenas, and I went with Elvin Hayes as my second choice over Wes Unseld, or over really he was kind of the other major consideration. John Wall also got some consideration there, but I think Arenas is definitely more fun than Wall in terms of video game play, and I think Elvin Hayes, obviously more scoring than Unseld, blocks a lot of shots. He definitely wasn't afraid to shoot from long range. He didn't make it a lot from long range, but he definitely wasn't afraid to. Right. He was definitely a long shooting big man. So I think that's the best combination that I can think of.
I like it. Yeah. Did you consider Etan Thomas at all, or no? That was
I did not consider Etan Thomas. No.
That's fine. I like the Arenas. I like the Arenas combo for sure.
Early player who might be fun for the Bullets, Gus Johnson. Obviously, dunker, big. Be kind of like a Sean Kemp type guy. That's kind of the style that he played in his career. Obviously, not much longevity with the in the NBA, but I think he's another good choice as well.
Sure. No, I like it a lot. Yeah, I think there's a few different ways you can go with the Wizards, because nobody really emerges as like a no doubt pick on the Wizards. So there's a few different ways you can go, but I think the way you did is pretty good. Like Unseld again, you try to find a way to get Unseld in there, but I think the way you did it, you have dynamic player in Gilbert Arenas, and then Elvin Hayes, who charter member of that franchise, a big part of that early franchise. So I like the idea as well of Elvin Hayes in there. So I'm cool with that pick for sure.
Yeah, and then you could also you could consider Oral Monroe over Gilbert Arenas, but I kind of wanted to pick different eras, so I think I think having Arenas as more modern player is a good choice.
Yeah,
so.
No, I like it.
So that's it. That's all we got. That was a fun little exercise there.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That's
yeah. So
but your very wrong Utah Jazz opinion, it still was a fun little exercise.
Hey, it's all right. You know what? I can accept being wrong. Oh, the Clippers. I forgot the Clippers. Okay. So
no one will blame you if you forgot the Clippers.
yes, so we have Bob McAdoo. So I'm going to hear this. This may be a hot take, or you may love it. I'm not sure.
Let's go.
But
let's see.
The second player that I would like to choose for the Hawks in place of Chris Paul, Jamal Crawford.
Oh, you're moving Jamal Crawford and Bob McAdoo to represent the Clippers.
Yes. Braves with
let's
McAdoo,
see.
But yes.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Right.
I don't hate it. And there's
all right.
You gotta get Jamal Crawford in the game somehow. It's our game. We're creating this game. Our hypothetical game. I feel like Jamal Crawford has to be in there.
He played the most in the Clippers in his career. So the Clippers. Yeah, that's his prime franchise. So he played the most, I believe, in his career with the Clippers. So that works. That tracks.
I like it. I mean, I'm down. I can't hate it. There's gonna be some people that might not appreciate it, but fuck those people. It's us. It's what we want.
Exactly. Yes. So all right. So we did it. We accomplished it. Hopefully, so video game maker, make this game so that we can feel good about ourselves. Also, something that helped us feel good about ourselves, if you left a positive rating and review on iTunes and or any other podcast venue that you listen to podcasts. We are on most or all of those places. If we're not on those places, let us know. We are on Facebook and Twitter at Over and Back. You can find us at Fansided/NBA at the Step Back, where we there's a lot of excellent writing about what's going on in the NBA season. You should definitely check that out. Rich's NBA Jam review will likely be on there soon as well. So anything else I forget, Rich?
Not really. We said the one thing, we'll put a link in the description as well for the NBA Jam book. You can just search it up as well if you want NBA Jam book by Rihanna Ali, but also bit.ly /OB-Jam, OB-Jam, I should say, if you want to get a quick link there to buy the book. But like I said, we'll drop a link in the description, or you can just search for it. Only ebook format right now, but definitely worth your time. And I think it costs like $5.99 or something like that for an ebook. So you can't beat it. And like I said, the review will be up pretty soon. Hopefully, maybe in a video review, as well as I can record some game footage of myself playing some NBA Jam as I talk about the game, the book as well. But really, really recommend it, and a big reason why we decided to do this episode, and it was a lot of fun. So I enjoyed this a lot, and I hope you did as well. So,
all right, everyone, take care, and we'll see you again next time.